Growing up, I always thought of cheating as essentially a bad thing that people did when their relationships weren't working out. To me, it was the ultimate betrayal. I had witnessed the hurt in my parents' eyes when their friends went through heartbreaks. I saw how the trust they had once built with their partners was shattered in an instant. My parents never talked openly about it, but I could tell from the way they carried themselves that it hurt deeply. They weren't the kind of people to forgive easily, especially when the pain came from someone they had loved and trusted. I promised myself, with all my heart, that I would never be the person who broke someone's heart like that. I vowed that I would always stay true, that I would respect the bond one shared with my partner, no matter what. As I grew older, this belief stuck with me. I told myself that love meant loyalty and that loyalty meant no room for dishonesty. I would be the kind of person who would face problems head-on in a relationship rather than running away or seeking comfort in someone else's arms. I believed that if things got tough, I would talk things out, and if it still didn't work, I would walk away rather than hurt someone who cared about me. I had seen how cheating could tear people apart, and I couldn't imagine ever putting someone through that kind of pain. It wasn't just about being faithful, it was about respecting the person who trusted you, who gave you their heart. How could I ever betray that? But life, as it often does, has a way of showing you that things are never as simple as they seem. Sometimes, no matter how strong your convictions are, life throws situations at you that make you question everything. It doesn't warn you when your carefully laid plans and beliefs are about to be tested. One minute, you think you have it all figured out, and the next, you find yourself in the middle of a mess you never imagined. I never thought I would be the person to stray. I never thought I would be the one who betrayed someone's trust. But when I found myself standing at that crossroads, with a decision to make that felt so right and so wrong at the same time, I understood that things are not always black and white. At that moment, the reality of my situation crashed over me like a wave, and I realized just how easy it could be to lose sight of your morals. What had seemed like a solid, unshakable belief now felt fragile, and I couldn't stop myself from wondering, how had I ended up here? How had I become someone I never thought I would be? That's when I realized that life is complicated, and the lines between right and wrong are often blurrier than we would like to admit. My name is Grace, and I was 22 when it happened. I had been dating Kevin for over 3 years. We met in college, and from the moment we started talking, something just clicked. He had this warmth about him, this way of making everything seem like it would be okay. It was easy to fall for him. We were that couple always together, laughing, planning, dreaming about the future. We had our ups and downs, sure. No relationship is perfect. But for the most part, we were happy together. Every time I thought about the future, I imagined Kevin by my side. He was kind, funny, thoughtful, everything I could have asked for in a partner. He loved me with all his heart, and I loved him too. But as time went on, I started to feel something shift. It was subtle at first, almost like a whisper in the back of my mind that I kept pushing aside. Things that once seemed easy were now beginning to feel heavier. Kevin was still the same, loving, patient, and supportive. But I began to notice that I was becoming restless. It wasn't his fault, he was doing everything right, everything a boyfriend should do. The problem was with me. I felt like I was losing pieces of who I was while being in the relationship. There were parts of myself that I used to be so passionate about, my dreams, my goals, but they were slowly fading. I wasn't the same person I was when I met Kevin. I used to be independent, driven, excited about what life had to offer. But now, it felt like I was giving up pieces of myself just to fit into the box of being someone's girlfriend. It wasn't that I didn't love Kevin, it was just that I felt like I was losing my identity in the process. And that scared me more than I realized. Kevin and I had talked about getting married someday, and we even joked about the kind of wedding we would have. We talked about having kids, buying a house, and building a life together. But the more we talked about it, the more it felt like something that was always just out of reach, like a dream that was too far away to touch. I didn't know if I was ready for that kind of commitment. The thought of settling down for the rest of my life, of tying myself to one person forever, felt overwhelming. I wasn't sure if I was even ready to settle down, let alone get married. And deep down, I started questioning everything. Was I ready for this kind of relationship? Was I even ready to be with someone long term? I had spent so much of my life focusing on my future, my career, and now, with Kevin, I was beginning to wonder if I had lost sight of my own goals in the process. I had always imagined that love would come naturally, but now it felt like I was questioning whether I was truly happy or if I was just going along with what seemed expected of me. Then, there was Rufus. I met him at work. He was new to the company, and at first, I didn't think much of him. He was just another face in the crowd, another colleague in the office. But as we spent more time together, I started to notice things about him that made me feel alive in ways I hadn't felt in a long time. Rufus was different, confident, outgoing, and effortlessly charming. He didn't make me feel like I had to fit into a mold, the way I often felt with Kevin. With Rufus, I could just be myself. Carefree, unrestrained, a side of me that had been buried under the weight of my relationship. It was like he brought out something in me that I didn't even know was missing. One night, we went out for drinks with some coworkers. It was supposed to be just a casual get-together, but as the night went on, Rufus and I found ourselves in a conversation that flowed so naturally it felt like we had known each other for years. We laughed, joked around, and teased each other. The atmosphere was light, the energy carefree, and the drinks seemed to loosen up any reservations I had. It wasn't that I planned for anything to happen, but with every sip, I felt a little more at ease, a little more drawn to him. The laughter between us became the kind of laughter I hadn't heard in a long time, genuine, free-spirited, and full of connection. Before I knew it, we were standing close, too close. Our words blurred into silence, and for a split second, the world around us seemed to fade. We were alone, lost in the rhythm of the moment, and then, without thinking, we kissed. It wasn't a soft, slow kiss, it was urgent, thrilling, a spark that ignited something I hadn't realized was so desperate to be set free. It was exciting, the kind of excitement that comes when you step into a world you've been too afraid to explore. In that moment, I didn't think about anything else, about Kevin, about the promises I'd made, about the life I had carefully built. I was caught up in the intensity of it all, in the escape that Rufus seemed to offer me. The night went on, and somehow, we ended up at Rufus's place. I wasn't thinking clearly. I wasn't thinking about Kevin and the trust we had built, the foundation we had laid over the past few years. I wasn't thinking about the promises we made to each other, the vows that were supposed to hold us together. I was just thinking about the way Rufus made me feel alive, free, like I could be anyone, anywhere, doing anything. It was an escape from the confusion that had been growing inside me. And, without much more thought, we slept together. That night, I stepped over a line I never imagined crossing, and the weight of that decision didn't hit me until the morning light shone through the blinds, casting a cold truth I couldn't deny. I woke up the next morning in a daze, my head throbbing slightly as the events of the night before slowly pieced themselves together in my mind. The blurry memories became clearer, and with each passing second, a weight settled heavily in my chest. The knot of guilt tightened, squeezing the air from my lungs. What had I done? How could I have betrayed Kevin like that? I could already imagine the pain in his eyes, the hurt I would see if he ever found out. The reality of my actions crashed over me, and I felt sick to my stomach. But in the midst of all that guilt, there was something else. A small, almost whispering voice inside me told me that it had felt good, that it had been freeing, in a way I couldn't quite explain. It was as if, for a few brief moments, I had stepped out of the life I had built and into something else entirely. The internal tug-of-war between guilt and freedom began to consume me. I didn't know how to feel, didn't know whether to hate myself for what I had done or to allow myself to feel the exhilaration that had come with it. It was confusing, this battle inside me. Kevin, the man I had loved for so long, was still there, a constant presence in my mind. I couldn't push him aside, no matter how badly I wanted to escape the guilt. But then there was Rufus, with his charm and his confidence, and the way he made me feel like I was more than just someone's girlfriend. I was alive, full of possibility, someone worthy of excitement. I couldn't stop thinking about him, no matter how hard I tried. For the next few days, Rufus was persistent. He sent me texts, his words playful and flirtatious. He called, asking me if I wanted to hang out again, if we could pick up where we left off. I could feel the pull, the temptation, the attraction that seemed to be drawing me closer to him. But each time I looked at my phone, I thought about Kevin. I thought about everything we had shared, the years together, the promises we had made. And with each thought, the guilt overwhelmed me even more. I couldn't get the image of Kevin out of my head, his face, the way he smiled at me, the way we had always been there for each other. How could I go back to him after what I had done? I wanted to tell Kevin everything. I wanted to confess, to lay it all out, to admit my mistake and hope that somehow he would understand. But each time I tried to gather the words, I couldn't find them. It was as if the weight of my betrayal had sealed my lips shut. How could I tell him I had been unfaithful? How could I explain the confusion, the moment of weakness, when I had betrayed his trust? I was drowning in my own lies, torn between two worlds, one with Kevin, where things had once felt safe and certain, and one with Rufus, where I felt like I could finally breathe again, but at what cost? Weeks passed, and I continued to live the lie. I went back to Kevin, trying my best to act like everything was fine, like nothing had changed. On the outside, I did all the right things, showing him love, making sure I was there for him, like I always had been. But inside, I was a mess. Every moment felt like a struggle. The guilt, the shame, those were my constant companions. Every time I looked at Kevin, I remembered the way he had looked at me when he said, "I love you." I saw the trust in his eyes, the unwavering belief that I was the one he had chosen. How could I betray him like that? How could I let myself fall into this dark hole of weakness and deceit? I felt like a stranger in my own life. But as if the guilt wasn't enough to break me, it was about to get worse. One day, I realized something I had been trying to ignore. My period was late. At first, I tried to brush it off, telling myself that maybe it was just stress, maybe my body was reacting to all the chaos I had been feeling inside. But as the days passed and the reality of it sank in, I couldn't ignore it any longer. My heart began to pound in my chest as the weight of the situation pressed down on me. I tried to push it away, to tell myself it wasn't happening, that I was overthinking things. But deep down, I knew. I couldn't keep pretending anymore. I bought a pregnancy test, and as I stood there in the bathroom, holding the small plastic stick, my hands shook uncontrollably. I didn't want to look, but I had to. The result was clear. I was pregnant. My heart stopped. The world around me seemed to spin. How could this be happening? How had I let this happen? My mind raced, trying to make sense of it, but all I could feel was an overwhelming wave of panic. I had cheated, and now, I was carrying the consequence of that mistake. A life was growing inside me, one that was a direct result of my betrayal. It felt like the floor had been pulled from under me. How could I explain this? How could I tell Kevin that I was pregnant, by another man? I couldn't tell him. Not yet. I wasn't ready to face that truth, to confront the devastation I had brought into my own life. The guilt was already suffocating me, and now it had become even heavier. I didn't know what to do. What was I supposed to say? How could I tell him that I was pregnant, knowing it wasn't his child? My thoughts swirled in an endless cycle of fear, shame, and regret. The thought of telling Kevin felt impossible, like I was being crushed under the weight of my own actions. For weeks, I kept this secret to myself, telling myself I would figure it out on my own. But as each day passed, the burden of the secret became unbearable. I couldn't look Kevin in the eye anymore. Every time he smiled at me, or touched me, or kissed me, I felt like a fraud. I wasn't the person he thought I was. I had betrayed him in the worst way possible, and now I was carrying the evidence of that betrayal. I couldn't be honest with him, not when I was so afraid of the consequences. How could I tell him the truth? Would he even want to stay with me if he knew? Could he ever forgive me? Or had I destroyed everything we had built with one selfish, terrible mistake? I decided to get an abortion. It felt like the only way to erase the consequences of my mistake, to make everything go away. But as I sat in the waiting room at the clinic, a part of me screamed that I was making another terrible decision. Was I really ready to end the life that had started growing inside me? Was I that selfish? I left before the procedure could happen. I couldn't go through with it. I was a mess. I didn't know what to do, who to turn to, or how to fix the damage I had caused. I couldn't erase what I had done, but I couldn't destroy the life that was now inside me either. I decided to tell Kevin the truth. One evening, as we sat together on the couch, I told him everything. I told him about Jason, about the affair, about the pregnancy. His face went pale as I spoke, and for a long moment, he just stared at me, unable to say anything. The silence between us was deafening. Finally, Kevin looked at me and said, "Grace, how could you do this to me? I loved you. I trusted you." His voice cracked, and I could see the hurt in his eyes. I felt like I was being torn apart inside. How could I make him understand? How could I ever make up for what I had done? The next few days were the hardest of my life. Kevin didn't speak to me for a long time. He needed space to process everything. I felt like I had lost him, like the love we shared was slipping through my fingers. But through the pain, I realized something. I had to face the consequences of my actions. I couldn't run from them anymore. I had to make things right, no matter how hard it was. Eventually, Kevin and I talked again. We cried, we argued, and we made a decision. He wasn't sure if he could forgive me, but he said he was willing to try. It wasn't easy. It still isn't easy. We're working through it, one day at a time. The guilt still haunts me, like a shadow that never quite leaves. Every time I close my eyes, I can still feel the weight of what I did, the pain of knowing that I betrayed the one person who loved me with all his heart. I'll never forget it. I'll never be able to fully undo the damage I caused, no matter how hard I try. It's a scar that won't fade, a mistake that has left an indelible mark on my soul. But amidst the endless waves of guilt, I've learned a painful, but crucial lesson. Cheating isn't just a mistake you can forget. It's a betrayal that cuts deeper than words can express. It's not just an action, it's a choice, a decision to break someone's heart, to destroy their trust in you. And those consequences, they last forever. They shape the future, the relationships that follow, and the person you become. No matter how much time passes, the sting of betrayal lingers, reminding you that you can't undo the past. I'm not proud of what I did. I'll never be able to say that I am, and I wouldn't ask for forgiveness without understanding the weight of my actions. But I am trying to move forward, to learn from my mistakes, and to be a better person. I know that the road to redemption isn't easy, and that I have a long way to go. Trust isn't something you can just rebuild overnight. It takes time, effort, and a willingness to change. But I also know that I can't change the past, and all I can do now is work toward being someone worthy of the trust one lost. I understand now that forgiveness is a journey, not a destination. It's not just about asking for it, but about proving through your actions that you are worthy of it. And in the process, I'm learning to forgive myself, too. I'm not perfect, and I may never be, but I'm trying. I'm trying to make things right, to show Kevin that I can be the person he thought I was, the person he deserves. The guilt almost destroyed me, piece by piece, but now, I'm learning to live with it. I'm learning to make peace with it, even if it's a slow, difficult process. I carry it with me, but it no longer controls me. It's a hard road, one I wish I didn't have to walk, but it's one I have to walk. And as I take each step forward, I remind myself that while I can't change the past, I can still shape the future.